Hello, everyone. Welcome to Organ India Facebook Live in association with JK Masale. JK Masale and Organ India have come together for a month-long campaign called Angdan Ek Naya Jeevan. This is the first ever campaign in Eastern India to raise awareness on organ donation and transplant. Today, joining us is a very special guest, Dr. Ramdeep Ray, who is head of liver transplant surgery at Apollo Gleneagles Hospital, Kolkata. In the past year, Kolkata has emerged as a leader in the organ donation space, with donations taking place regularly even through lockdown. And Dr. Ray is here to discuss the organ donation and transplant program in West Bengal. Dr. Ray, on behalf of Organ India and JK Masale, we welcome you to the live.
Thank you so much, Sunaina. The welcome actually started some time back because even as I was driving between hospital and home, there's the awareness campaign with the Organ India and JK Masale. It's all over the city, and it was nice to see so many billboards which are really promoting the cause of organ donation, much needed in this part of the country. Great work so far.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're able to see it, and then that means hopefully the rest of the public in Kolkata can also see that, quite well. So, Dr. Ray, I wanted to ask you, like there were 5 donations in 2 weeks in July of 2021 in Kolkata, and it seems to be leading the way in Eastern India on organ donation and transplant. And even through the last year or so, there have been a lot of donations that have taken place. Can you tell us something about how this has come about? Because I remember a couple of years ago, there were hardly any donations happening in Calcutta.
Yeah, I think it's very exciting times here in Kolkata, especially because East India had been lagging in transplant activity. Kidney transplants have been happening, but liver transplants, heart transplants have been very few and far between. So I think organ donation awareness is picking up to some extent. I have always felt that whenever there's a blood donation camp in the eastern part of India, there are lots of donors, people who come forward and donate blood in huge numbers, which is not often seen in other parts of the country. In North India, I would rarely see that. So there's a general altruism which is there. It's just that the transplant technology, the science had not been there, which is now there. And now the awareness needs to be there. And I'm sure East India is going to lead the way.
Wonderful. Can you just give us some numbers, if you know of, about people, how many transplants are required over there and how many transplants are happening, not only in Kolkata, maybe even in other areas around there?
So West Bengal is one of the more populated states of India. And India itself, it is estimated that 2 lakh people die of liver diseases and liver failure every year. And around 25,000 would probably be saved with the transplant. So we've been looking at 25,000 liver transplant needed every year in the whole of India, against a number of around 1,500 to 2,000 happening every year. So with West Bengal being among the more populated states, you can just extrapolate the numbers are going to be, at least have to be in a few hundreds, which is not happening. Liver transplant. Kidneys are just anecdotal. Heart is much rarer. Kidneys, living donor kidney transplants are happening, but cadaveric really needs to happen. It has happened. There was some activity in 2019, some lull in 2020, and now again it seems to be picking up after the second wave.
Yes, because I was reading in the paper that there were 5 donations in less than in 2 weeks. So Kolkata is suddenly all over the news, as far as donations are concerned, and I think that's great. So even like I was saying, even through lockdown, I've heard from one family member of a donor that I think this donation happened right in the beginning of the second lockdown, and they really wanted to donate. It was a doctor who had passed away, and at the time, everybody told them no, it's not going to happen because there's a lockdown happening and there's fear of COVID. And eventually, because they really wanted to do it, eventually the whole machinery came together, hospital, Roto, everybody, to ensure that the donation did happen. Despite the fact, that there was a lockdown and there was COVID. And I think that's something really amazing. I think that donation was at your hospital, if I'm not mistaken. But how did that come about? Because everyone is pretty scared about doing this in the middle of COVID.
That came about only for one reason: the sheer determination of the family to donate, that the organs be used. The son, they were very clear that they want the organs used, and they were ready to make an effort for that. So most of the people here dismissed the situation because the pandemic was at its peak. The numbers were really high, and kidney transplants being relatively elective procedures, so there wasn't a pressing need that time. But what happened was they were very keen, and then the second hurdle was that the donor blood group was AB. Now, AB blood group is not so common. So it's not as if you have a huge number of AB recipients waiting all the time. The AB recipient who we had was COVID positive, so couldn't have a transplant. So again, there was no recipient in West Bengal for liver or in the entire Eastern India. Even then, we did not want it wasted, so we got in touch with our ROTO, the regional transplant organization, got in touch with NOTO, the national transplant organization. So they said that there was one recipient in Delhi NCR. So we harvested the organ here because it wasn't possible for the team to come. Because if the team were to come, they would need an RT-PCR negative report, which would take around a few hours turnaround time. So we said, okay, you don't come. We will harvest the liver for you. The liver will move on the flight, and then the transplant happened there. So it was just because of the determination of the family. Very nice.
That's really nice. And I think a lot of these things do happen when people are really keen to, to donate, despite all the odds. So another, I want to ask you that, any donation transplant program in any state needs a good level of awareness, not only amongst the public, which is of course what we are trying to do, is raise awareness about it in the public, but also amongst the medical community. So what is the situation, in the East, not only Kolkata and West Bengal, but in other states like Assam, northeastern states, Odisha, all of that? I mean, what is the situation like with the medical community?
So even about a decade back, when I was in Delhi NCR, there were many doctors who were not aware about when organs could be harvested. The concept of brain death and apnea test, and they were not very clear about it. So that clarity has come across the medical fraternity, and I think it's now happened across India. So even in the states where transplants are not happening, because there is discussion, because there is debate around this big social problem, organ availability, transplants, so doctors across are quite aware. Even nurses are now getting really aware. So I think there's the general knowledge about organ donation is slowly increasing in medical fraternity, nursing, even students, college students, school students. I think compared to 10 years back, they're now much more aware about the concept of organ donation.
Also because a lot of it comes out in the media much more often than it probably did earlier. So people keep reading it and thinking that, okay, because we put all these hoardings up in Kolkata and with JK Masale, they have put all these hoardings, and people are looking at it and calling and saying that, I wanted to, I've been wanting to do it for some time, but I never got around to it. And now that we've got this hoarding and we've seen it and this campaign is going on, we really want to do it. So
let's look at it in a very specific, small example. Of course, it helps in general awareness. But imagine a situation where right now, in Kolkata city, if there were a brain dead patient anywhere in the hospital, and the family members would be traveling to the hospital and back, and they would be seeing those hoardings, those billboards. Now, when tomorrow morning any doctor goes and talks about organ donation, this person is already primed by these billboards. So if not anything right now, that will be a major instrument for enabling counseling.
Right. Yeah, that's great. So when it comes to the donation sides of things at the hospital, I mean, I know you are on the transplant side and not on the the side that counsels the patients and all. But you must be knowing what are the challenges like in terms of what happens when you do approach a family for donation. What is the reaction like? What are your challenges there?
Uh, the first thing that counselors need to understand is that initially you go in, everyone has some mental blocks, some biases. You approach a particular situation with some individual bias. So very often counselors go in and look at a family and say, this is not the kind of family who would think about organ donation. This first presumption is wrong. We have to understand that there is nothing like that. Everyone has to be counseled, everyone has to be approached and given a fair chance to donate. That's one. Second is I look at only two kinds of families. One kind of family is the kind of family who has no idea, no concept about organ donation. That's one. And second is a family who has an idea what organ donation is. Now, when someone has no idea, so educating them to that level of awareness to which they will be able to take a decision about donating the organs of his or her husband, wife, brother, sister is a big challenge. You're trying to educate someone about anything at a time when his brother or sister or wife has died. It's a huge challenge. So if this work is done by the media, by NGOs, by governments, if that basic awareness is taken care of, then it's possible. And so long as there's some kind of trust between the healthcare givers and the patient family, then it's very easy.
Okay. And as far as transplants are concerned, are people aware of transplants? What that they should go in for a transplant, what it entails. Do they have questions when they come to you, or are they pretty much aware about what a transplant is? What impact it will have on their life?
So, doctors, specialists have been used for decades, over decades, to treating patients with liver disease where transplant was not even an option. So, there used to be a situation where patients, even on their deathbed, have reached the deathbed with chronic liver disease, but have never been told about the option about liver transplantation. That is improving. At least patients with liver cirrhosis, any gastroenterologist treating the patient now is telling about liver transplantation. So that's a step forward.
And are patients, are they reluctant to come forward even if the doctor does tell them? Initially, we still find that when people are told that they need a transplant, suddenly it's a shock and they're like, oh my God, what is a transplant?
There's a phase of denial that maybe the patient would become better without a transplant. So it takes some time for them to understand, to take this in. And yes, then there comes a phase of acceptance that yes, he can potentially benefit with a liver transplant. So it's improving. It's definitely improving.
Okay. And at what point does somebody who has liver disease, I know it's different for every patient, but at what point, what is the point that comes where after which you say yes, he or she needs the transplant, that it's inevitable now?
The most common reason for a liver disease, for having a transplant is liver cirrhosis. Liver cirrhosis is a kind of scarring of the liver where the liver stops working properly. So when someone has liver cirrhosis, that's when we start thinking about liver transplant. But not everyone with liver cirrhosis needs a transplant. Those with complicated liver cirrhosis. The medical term for it is decompensated liver cirrhosis. Decompensated means compensated is when it's a stable liver cirrhosis. Decompensate means becomes unstable with water filling up in the tummy, ascites, bleeding, jaundice, yellowing of the eyes, bleeding problems like the blood test, which give an idea about the bleeding, they sort of get altered. And there's something called hepatic encephalopathy where people start behaving oddly because the toxins that are there in the blood are not filtered in the liver, go on to the brain, especially ammonia. And then they have something called hepatic encephalopathy, which basically means behavioral changes because of high toxins in the blood. When these things start happening, one should seriously consider a liver transplant.
Okay. And do you, somebody has a question. which is what is the status of ABO incompatible liver transplant in India?
Yes,
And also, are you doing them in Kolkata?
Yes, ABO incompatible transplants are happening in everywhere across the country. More for kidney, in liver also. We do encourage always an ABO compatible liver transplant where someone who has the same or O blood group donates. But yes, when that's not possible, ABO incompatible transplants are happening where you kind of tweak the immune system of the patient by some procedures which very simplistically are like dialysis. You tweak the immune system so that kind of the blood group sort of changes, or the patient starts behaving like a person of a different blood group. And then it's possible to do an ABO incompatible transplant. The complications rates are a little higher, but yes, they're definitely required sometimes when there's no other donor in the family.
Okay. And one thing I wanted to ask you, I know you have many cases that you have, many patients and all of that you've had. Any one particular case that kind of, that you remember as being either, the most, the most challenging or the most satisfying, or whatever the case may be?
There have been many such cases, but I'd like to highlight a patient who came for transplant, not because it was surgically challenging, but later we were discussing. So there was this patient from Kolkata and who came for transplant when I was in Delhi NCR, and young chap, IT professional, and he walked with a limp in his gait, and the reason was he had polio in childhood, because of which he had a bit of a limp. But he was fine otherwise, no other problems because of polio. So he was leading a normal life, and then he had hepatitis B, and because of hepatitis B, he went on to develop liver cirrhosis and liver failure and required a liver transplant. And he did well, went back. He was the son of a pediatrician in Kolkata. So all done, but we were sitting and chatting one day amongst ourselves, and we said to ourselves, look, he had two diseases. One was polio, and two was hepatitis B. And he was the son of a pediatrician, which means he did not receive the vaccine for polio. He did not receive the vaccine for hepatitis B, both of which were eminently preventable health conditions. Today, the specific reason why I bring this up is today is World Hepatitis Day, 28th of July. And on the sidelines of this discussion on transplantation, I thought it is important to emphasize that how we can completely prevent hepatitis B by this simple hepatitis B vaccination, which is now recommended for anyone and everyone who hasn't had the vaccine. So it is sad that a person should have had to suffer from gait problems due to polio and liver disease and require a transplant due to two things which could have been prevented, one with an oral vaccine, another with an injectable vaccine.
And that too, their own parents who are pediatricians.
Yes.
So talking of hepatitis and the World Hepatitis Day, I know it can be quite prevalent. Also, how is the situation now in hepatitis as compared to what it was, say, 15, 20 years ago? Have things improved, or do you see as many patients coming?
So hepatitis C hepatitis C was more commonly because of blood transfusion, because there was a period in many countries where the blood that was transfused was not properly checked for hepatitis C. That's true even for neighboring countries like Pakistan, where there's a huge number of hepatitis C. In the US, hepatitis C was very high. That's really come down. Hepatitis B has also, the numbers have come down a little, I think. So now the bigger problem is NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which is basically a kind of related to diabetes, obesity, a metabolic syndrome. So this, very simplistically, it would be a severe case of fatty liver. So the fatty liver epidemic is really...
Right. That is my next question, actually. Somebody has also asked, can fatty liver lead to CLD or transplant, and at what point should we take take fatty liver seriously? Because I think at some point or the other, so many, a huge percentage of people do get fatty liver, and it's kind of slightly ignored.
So it's important that we put fatty liver in the right perspective. We have to understand that fatty liver is very, very, very common. It is not something that you should straight away be alarmed about. You should take it seriously, and lifestyle changes, reduction in the amount of zero in the fats and calories that you're taking in, a low calorie diet, bringing down your weight, exercise, and some medicines can help in fatty liver. So act on your fatty liver if it is there, but do not be alarmed. Having said that, there is going to be a proportion of cases. That proportion may progress to liver fibrosis, then liver cirrhosis, and then liver transplantation be needed as well. So please consult your doctors, your gastroenterologist, hepatologist, and ensure that whether your fatty liver disease has progressed to a stage where you really should be worried about it, or some minor tweaking in your lifestyle can just bring it under control.
Thank you so much. Any message that you have for the people who are watching us today that you'd like to give them?
The message is that, again, please have a discussion about organ donation. Whether you want to donate, whether you don't want to donate, that's entirely up to you. Donation is a beautiful thing. When you die, your organs are going to be no use to you or your family. Please tell your family members what you want, whether you want your organs to be used after transplant. Have this discussion now.
Okay, Dr. Ray, there's one more question. Does long-term use of metformin affect the liver?
Metformin is not brilliant for the liver in someone who has liver disease. Your diabetologist will know at what point of time to shift from these drugs to insulin when required. But the benefits of metformin for diabetes are so much that you do not need to really concentrate only on this particular effect on the liver. So don't think too much about it. Your diabetologist will know when to change your medicines, keeping your liver disease in mind.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ray, for joining us today and for your incredible insight into the world of organ donation and transplant. For all those watching, in case you want more information or you want to pledge your organs, if you have been inspired by Dr. Ray, please log on to www.organindia.org or www.jkspices.com or call our toll-free number 1-800-120-3648. Dr. Ray, once again, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Sunaina. Thank you, Sunaina. It's been wonderful. And it's a great effort by your organization, Organ India and JK Masale. And we need much, much more of these and more discussion, especially in the eastern part of India. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much.